everyone, it's Jordan. Today I'm going to be talking about worst books that I've read this year according to Goodreads. In case you haven't seen it yet, I did a video where I talked about best books that I've read this year according to Goodreads, and I don't normally do worst books of the year in general just because I know everybody has their own opinion and I just don't like to, bash something that someone else likes. Just me as a person. But with this video, I am going to see whether I did enjoy these books or not. This is like the only time I will talk about books that I probably dislike. It depends on what Goodreads says the worst books I've read this year. But let's get to the video. So I'm going on to Goodreads and going to the average rating, and we shall see what was the worst books that I've read this year according to Goodreads. But this will be very interesting. And also I got this video idea from Haley from Haley Bookland, which I'll link her video down below so you guys can check it out. And I just thought this is a good idea, and I'm curious about the books that I've read as the worst according to Goodreads, but we shall see. Oh, this is interesting. So the worst book that I've read this year according to Goodreads is The Rising the Horseman by Serena Valentino. This is a Legend of Sleepy Hollow retelling which I read this year. I actually enjoyed it, to be honest with you. I'm surprised that it's the lowest rated books that I've read according to Goodreads, and I know there was mixed reviews going into it. Some people either like it or hate it, but apparently mostly people have hated it, and I can see why some people didn't like it, just because you're getting different characters' perspective from Katrina herself from the original Legend of Sleepy Hollow and her descendant Kat. So I can see that's kind of why people didn't like it, or they think the author's trying to rewrite what happens in the original story. I don't know, but this is really surprising how Goodreads thinks this is the worst book of one of the worst books I've read this year, but actually it isn't. I actually enjoyed it a lot, and I just thought it's a really good Halloween read to me. So the next book that is a worst book that I've read this year according to Goodreads is Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin, and I'm honestly not surprised it's on this list, but it's not the worst book that I've read this year. I actually really enjoyed it, because I know with the first book of the series, Serpent and Dove, there was mixed reviews on it, and some people either love it or hate it, but for me, I loved it. I love the series, and I just can't wait to read the last book of the trilogy. But I am just not surprised, and not that surprised that it's Goodreads thinks this is my worst book that I've read this year, when I actually really enjoyed Blood and Honey, and I still enjoyed it, even though Goodreads thinks that I haven't. And the next book that is the worst book that I've read this year according to Goodreads is Hocus Pocus and the all-new sequel. I honestly don't remember who was the author of it. A.W. Jantha, and I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm not surprised it's on this, it's been low rated, because when it first came out there was mixed reviews on it. Some people either love it or hate it. I think most people didn't like it. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're talking about the sequel that the author wrote for Hocus Pocus, and of course the actual sequel came out this year, and that's not how the story, they went with a different direction with the sequel. But I honestly, I really enjoyed the sequel, even though of course I do like Hocus Pocus, and I know some people don't like it, but seeing it in novel form was pretty interesting, and I think it was a decent read for me. And yeah, I'm not surprised that Goodreads thinks is one of the worst books I've read this year, and I still enjoyed Hocus Pocus still, even though the sequel was interesting, and I wish they would have gotten that for the actual film. The next book that Goodreads thinks is the worst book that I've read this year is The Daughter of Sherlock Holmes by Leonard Goldberg. I honestly really, again, another book that I enjoyed, and I'm surprised that it's the lowest rated that I've read. I know it's supposed to be a retelling of Sherlock Holmes, except told in his daughter's perspective, and I thought it was a really decent book. I really enjoyed it, and I do want to continue on with the series, and I honestly don't know how people have not liked it, other than it's a retelling of Sherlock Holmes, because some people either like the retellings or some that don't, but other than that, I thought it was a decent read for me this year. And the next book that that's Goodreads thinks is the worst book that I've read this year, I'm actually surprised that's on here, and since I read it recently, The Holiday Swap by Maggie Knox. I can see, like, I can see why some people didn't like it. I know I personally enjoyed it. It was like a Hallmark movie to me. I really liked the story concept, how it's almost like The Parent Trap, but in a Christmas story form. That's what I liked about it. And I like the sister relationship, and I do like the characters, but it's really hard to tell, like, how people wouldn't like it, because I know I personally liked it, and it was a recent read for me, and I thought it was just a decent read for me, and I just really enjoyed it, and I would like to read more from this author, but I'm surprised that Goodreads thinks is the worst book that I've read this year when I actually enjoyed it. The next book that Goodreads thinks is the worst book that I've read this year is The Grimrose Girls by Laura Paul. I honestly read this at the beginning of this year, and I actually really enjoyed it more than I thought I would. It's basically supposed to be like Pretty Little Liars meets the various fairy tales from what I've read. I thought it was really decent read. I really liked the concept of the story, and I know the sequel just came out this year, which I'm planning on reading because I really enjoyed the story. It's all, like I said, it's like Pretty Little Liars and mixed with fairy tales, because that's what grabbed my attention, and it was a decent read for me, but I honestly haven't. This is surprising how I'm talking about books that I liked, even though Goodreads thinks that it probably would be the worst books that I've read this year, but I thought it was a decent read, just like all the other books that I've talked about in this video. The next book that Goodreads thinks is the worst book that I've read this year is You Have a Match by Emma Lord. I honestly did think I did really enjoy it, but I didn't like it as much as Tweet Cute, which is really weird, but I know it's about a girl who's discovering that she has a biological sister, and she meets with her in summer camp, and that's basically what I remembered from Rena, because I know I read it in the beginning of this year, and it was like one of the Emma Lord's books that I was anticipating, because it came out in 2021, I think. Yeah, it did, and I was anticipating that, and it kind of, I still enjoyed it, but it was like I said, I didn't like as much as Tweet Cute, but I know she has one book that came out this year that I still haven't read, which is called When You Have a Chance, but I know she has another one coming out next year, so I honestly I think it was a decent book, even though it's not my favorite. It's definitely not my favorite from Emma Lord, because I still love Tweet Cute, but we shall see on her if I like her other books as well. And the next book that Goodreads thinks is the worst book that I've read this year, and I'm also surprised that's on the list. It's The Upside of Falling by Alex Light. This is basically about a girl who's like, I honestly don't know how people don't like it, other than it's like I don't know how to explain it, because I know this story was published in Wattpad, I think that's what the website's called. I don't know, but I thought it was a decent story, and I could probably see why some people didn't like it, because it's like shorter than the book is shorter than expecting from a YA contemporary, but I thought it was a decent story. But again, I'm surprised to not see any books that I haven't liked on here yet, but I'm still like, this is a decent YA contemporary book in my opinion. Okay, so the next book that Goodreads thinks is the worst book that I've read this year, and I actually am starting to like books for this author, and this is really surprising how it's on this list, which is These Deadly Games by Diana Urban. This is her latest YA mystery book that just came out this year, and it was by most anticipated release of the year. I am surprised how it's lowest rated out of all the books that I've read this year, and I'm just surprised, just because this is like one of my favorite books by her so far, and yeah, it's so surprising. Like, I honestly really enjoyed it, so this is very surprising to me. And I'm excited about her new book that's coming out next year, and this is just surprising to me to see an anticipated book that I've read this year at the lowest as one of the lowest rated books that I've read this year. It's just shocked me. So the last book that Goodreads thinks is the worst book of the year, I don't think it was that bad of a book, but I didn't like it as much as the previous book that I've read from this author, which is The Forgotten Book by my child Glacier. I still can't pronounce the author's name, and I apologize for that, but I am surprised but not surprised at the same time, just because I know I loved The Book Jumper when I first read it, but when I read this one, I just didn't feel connected to the characters as much. I mean, I gave the book 4 stars, don't get me wrong, and like, it's like one of my least favorite books that I read this year. That's why I can say it. I just felt disappointed that I didn't enjoy as much as The Book Jumper, which I've read 4 years ago, and this book, I do have to agree, it is a disappointing book that I read this year, even though I did give it 4 stars, but it still was a disappointing book that I've read this year. That's one thing that I'll have to admit, and it just, I was excited to read it when it came out, like, a few years ago, but I read it this year, I just was disappointed overall. So that's all the books that Goodreads thinks the worst books that I've read this year, according to Goodreads. This was really as interesting as the other video that I did where I talked about the best books that I've read this year according to Goodreads, but it was still a lot of fun. And if you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up and comment down below what books that Goodreads thinks is your worst book of the year, because I'm curious. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos. Also, you can follow me on social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads, which all links will be down below for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!